Hey everyone, Reid Henrichs of Valor. The purpose of this video today is to talk about the Second Amendment and how the United States government is an absolute enemy to it. Let's go ahead and get started. Folks, you've been paying attention lately. You'll know that our illustrious president, Joe Biden, has said that semi-automatic firearms, there's no rational reason for anybody to own a semi-automatic firearm. Now, I don't know about you, but I find that quite ironic, given that he's surrounded by 24-hour security and will be for the rest of his life. I also find it ironic that when he's talking about firearms, specifically semi-automatic firearms, which are by far the most prolific firearms in ownership today by the United States, did you know that there's a third of the country that owns firearms? 1/3 of people 18 and older own firearms in this country. Can you imagine if there was any other topic that affected as many people in this country? The only thing I guess you could like make a larger demographic would be like men and women. Like other than that, there's not a bigger demographic than firearms owners in this country. So when you're talking about a president who says that 1/3 of adults, there's no reason for them to have what we have, that's absurd. Another thing that's absurd to me is that he just doesn't understand how prolific defensive uses of firearms are in this country. And no matter how you slice the bread and no matter what study that you use, whether it's done at a college or whether it's done via the government itself, no matter how you slice the bread, the amount of defensive use of firearms compared to criminal use of firearms, it's not even close. And at the worst study that I've seen, it was equal. In other words, American citizens defend themselves against violent criminals the exact same times that criminals use firearms. And that's the worst study that I found. These studies go back over 30 years. And I thought it was funny when Bill Clinton decided to do one with the Department of Justice. And it kind of backfired on him because he found that it was hundreds of thousands, if not millions of times a year where people use firearms to defend themselves. And even the latest one that they just found out, there's a study out of Georgetown, found that people use firearms in defensive uses over 1 million times a year, right? That was done by the Georgetown study. The most ironic thing that you're going to find, though, is that if you break it down, as I've mentioned already, 1/3 of adults in this country own firearms. And over half of the states are what's known as permitless carry or constitutional carry. So he's got a problem with half the country. When you break it down to states that have open carry only without permission, that number is closer to the upper 30s. So now you're talking, oh, he's got a problem with over 2/3 of the country. I don't know about you guys, but not everybody that I know is walking around with a revolver or a double-barrel shotgun. I know that's Biden's weapon of choice, and I know that that's what he wants everybody to use. But no matter how you slice it, semi-automatic firearms are an inherent part of this country. People use them all the time to protect themselves. He's protected by not only semi-automatic firearms, but fully automatic firearms. He's protected by guns that we purchased with our own money. He's protected by ammo that we purchased with our tax dollars. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to be lectured by a demented old hack who gave the largest terrorist organization in the world almost $90 billion in military hardware, to include M4 rifles, to include machine guns, hundreds of millions of rounds of ammo, and God knows what else. I'm not going to sit here and be lectured by a person like that. And you want to know what's odd? The media is all about this. They're all about gun control. And they will report when there's a shooting that takes place. They'll report it. But what they won't report is people defending their home with firearms. What they won't report is people that have protected themselves and their families with firearms. They won't report that. But whoa, lo and behold, when there's a shooting that happens, and by the way, let's not pick and choose our battles here, because when these shootings happen in Chicago, silence. When dozens of people are killed in Chicago every day, all gang related, silence. Nobody says anything. Oh, but when it's not involved in Chicago and it's not an inner city, oh, then all of a sudden it's a big deal. I find that quite hypocritical, and I find it quite disingenuous that this administration would attempt to frame the narrative that way. But when you're dealing with propaganda, when you're dealing with people that know how to spin a narrative to appeal to low information people, and that's exactly what this administration does. When you have an administration like that who's literally at odds with over half the states in this country, who's at odds with 1/3 of the people that own firearms in this country, that's pretty problematic. If I look back in history and found a similar situation, I would say, wow, that's almost how the United States came into being, isn't it? And if you are watching this video, you're probably a Second Amendment person. You're probably a firearms owner. If you're not, I want you to consider this. What if this was any other part of the Constitution? What if this was any other part of the Bill of Rights? What if it was the president saying, well, nobody needs the Fourth Amendment. Nobody needs protection against illegal search and seizure. The FBI should be able to go in and search whoever they want, whenever they want. What if it was about your right to a speedy trial? No, not everybody needs a trial. I think that's absurd. People would be absolutely perplexed, wouldn't they? But when it's the Second Amendment, when it's something special that made this country possible and continues to make this country possible, the only reason why we don't have an overwhelmingly tyrannical government, and it's becoming tyrannical in many ways, but the only reason that we still exist as a quasi-free people is because of our right to keep and bear arms. And they know that's the last impediment. That's the last obstacle in their way to making this country like every other tin-pot dictatorship in the world, where you're not allowed to speak out. We're not allowed to exercise free speech or assemble. We are not allowed to be safe in your own home. They're one step away, and they know that there's nothing that they can do about it. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not going to give up my firearms. There's not a thing in the world that would ever make me give up my firearm. And if you get put to the test, and if they want to keep pushing this issue, they're going to figure out real quick, hey, we're not as popular as we think we are. And my message for you today is if you give up your guns, you're going to give up your life and your freedom, and you're going to give up your country, because that's what makes America special. And in the words of Thomas Jefferson, I prefer dangerous freedom to peaceful slavery. If you found the information in the video helpful, subscribe to the channel, follow me on social media, that link is below. If you want to learn how to protect yourself, you want to learn how to protect your family against violent criminals, come out to Valor and we can help you. It's Reid Henrichs of Valor reminding you the lessons that we learn written on the tombstones of others. We'll see you on the ridge.